Lewis Hamilton and Loic Serra's integration into Ferrari is very likely to have given a massive boost to the car before the season has even started, as reports emerged that the one-lap struggles of the seven-time world champion could come to an end in 2025. Going head-to-head against one of the best qualifiers in the league, Hamilton will have a very difficult task to keep Leclerc behind or even get ahead of him in the first place. But the changes that Serra made are going to change the narrative towards Hamilton a bit more than we could have expected. With this in mind, can Hamilton start his Ferrari tenure with an early dominance? And if so, how will the Leclerc camp respond to this? One of the factors that brought Hamilton to Ferrari is Loic Serra, the man who shared the same beliefs as Hamilton regarding the zero pod design in Mercedes, and the man who is going to serve as the technical chassis director in Ferrari. Of course, it seems like he did know a thing or two about the car before telling Hamilton about it, and it's likely what brought the attention of the seven-time world champion, because if you look at how things went down with Mercedes, he didn't even test out the car before signing the deal with the Maranello-based squad. But now the situation is vastly different, and after the massive underperformance from Hamilton during qualifying compared to Russell, which can be pinned down to the fact that he was driving experimental setups with the W15, it's highly unlikely that the seven-time world champion is going to experience the same troubles here in Ferrari. Again, the key to this is Loic Serra, because an Italian report of motorsport.com said that the basics of the car have been altered and changed, and that has affected the car's development to a greater extent. Loic Serra is working hard on the 2025 version of the car, because if you were to ask Vasseur, then the team is in full contention for the championship next year, and that is why they won't give up resources as early as the others to invest in the newly regulated era, even though they are going to do it at a certain point in the next season. The one-lap performance of the Project 677, as the car is being called right now, is going to be a massive boost, precisely because Serra's area of specialization is vehicle dynamics. The expertise of Serra will benefit Hamilton in many ways, and one of the most important ones is the suspension components like the torsion bars and the shock absorbers, which could help Ferrari gain even more pace over one lap, thanks to the fact that Ferrari has worked extremely closely with Pirelli regarding the tyre development in 2025. Serra has already implemented changes to the car that have altered and changed the basic behaviour of it, something that Enrico Cardiel couldn't pull off, and the only significant thing they are keeping from his era is the rear suspension setup pushrod. Ferrari has adopted the front pull rod layout, as it's obviously a huge work done not just by Serra but the team of engineers around him as well. Diego Tondai, Fabio Montecchi, as well as Marco Adorno. The combination of these engineers have worked heavily towards what's called a change in the process of weight distribution of the car. Therefore, Ferrari hopes and expects that further gains will be made in the area of overheating and managing longer race stints, which, if we're to look at how 2024's version of Monza has ended up, is definitely a step in the right direction, and it can only get better from here on. And this is why a 99% change in the car is coming for 2025, as Vasseur believes that the competition will be very tight and they need to make bold moves in order to score bold results. When talking about it, the Frenchman said, "If it will be competitive, we'll find out in Bahrain. Sometimes you don't realise you're taking risks until afterwards. The car will be completely new. I think we'll have less than 1% of the parts in common with the 2024 cars. It's a different project, but the same applies to everyone. We can't say now if 2025 will be our year, but I trust the project we are working on. It will still be an intense challenge like the one we just completed. I am very proud of how we tackled difficulties this year, but we must take another step towards consistency." Of course, these are not the only changes that we're going to see on the car. The wheelbase is going to be revised and the gap is going to rise to the absolute limit allowed by F1's technical regulations, 3,600 millimeters. This will be both good and bad, because while it will be great for traditional circuits due to more downforce being generated thanks to the extra surface area, circuits like Monaco, Singapore and Hungary will be the weak spots for the team, and they would have to find a compromise for tracks like those. Nevertheless, Serra has decided to make these bold changes, and what is worth noting is that Hamilton's mission is going to be very, very important here. He will try to prove to the entire Formula One world that the spell in Mercedes was purely because of the team and not the driver, and that he still has it in himself to win races and compete for championships. That is what he came to do in Ferrari in the first place, and that is what he's going to do until his career is up, if it ends with the Maranello team, of course. But what we must not forget is that Leclerc is going against one of the best, if not the best qualifiers on the grid, Charles Leclerc. If these changes are benefiting the overall performance of the car and not going to be focused on the driving style of Hamilton solely, then Leclerc is going to benefit a lot from it as well. This is further bad news for the Brit because his teammate is going to receive a boost in what he's been doing pretty well throughout his career, delivering a one-lap masterpiece. And there are certain worries that this is the reason why Leclerc might be the first champion for Ferrari after Raikkonen's 2007 campaign. Ralf Schumacher, for example, doesn't believe that Vasseur can fix the problems of Hamilton, because not only did he say that the 7-time world champion is not good at giving feedback towards the engineers, but he is also going to struggle to adapt to the modern cars era. Yes, Hamilton did change quite a few eras in his career in Formula One that started all the way back in 2007. However, he seemed to have the greatest trouble with the ground effect one, and now that the cars are getting heavier and slower to drive, it might expose a weakness that we didn't know Hamilton had in the first place. Elaborating further on this, Ralf said, "Vasseur won't really be able to help Hamilton, just as Wolff couldn't do it this year. Neither of them is responsible for the design of the car. In conclusion, Lewis has to adapt to the characteristics of the car and not the other way around. Today, the cars are heavier and slower to drive. There is less mechanical grip. That means that you have to change your driving style, especially in the braking zones." And that is exactly where Lewis lost time to Russell. It was particularly evident in qualifying that Lewis often no longer knew exactly how to brake. That is why he often had problems hitting the apex. He was used to braking extremely late, but that was no longer possible with the Mercedes. What is even more interesting is the fact that Ralf has put Leclerc on the pedestal when it comes to being more competitive compared to his teammate, because he's much smarter than we give him credit for regarding the car's setup. Both of the drivers have one flaw that they need to fix sooner rather than later, not relying on their engineers and their team too much, because we've seen what happens when a driver has self-confidence, like Sainz on events like Monaco and Silverstone in 2022. Be that as it may, Ferrari will definitely have a lot to think about with this duo, because it could go either way. It could be a sweet headache, like Vasseur explained, as they will fight for 1-2 finishes, or it could be a 2016 version of Mercedes where crashes will be present in almost every race, with the difference that the rest of the grid will capitalise massively on them, unlike in 2016. With all this in mind, do you think that Hamilton's qualifying woes will be fixed by the latest changes from Serra? And if so, do you think that the 7-time world champion knows what's waiting for him in Ferrari from 2025 onwards? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the controversial reunion of Hamilton and Cullen in Ferrari, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.